I'm Billy S, welcome back to the channel, and a happy Halloween to all of you watching at home. Halloween is my boyfriend's favourite holiday of the year, so this video is dedicated to you, boyo, as I rank my top 10 scariest Soulsborne moments. For this video, I'm looking at those minor moments in From Software's games that stuck with me, brief glimpses of some of the great setups and payoffs that they can come up with. Now, what I found terrifying, others may not have thought of, so share your scariest moments down below in the comments. And I'm going to make an effort to choose moments that don't coincide with my video last week on the scariest enemies from each Soulsborne game. So if you're wondering why Sekiro's Headless don't make an appearance today, now you know. And of course, I will make sure every Soulsborne game is represented with at least one moment. With all that being said, my top 10 scariest Soulsborne moments, ranked. Happy Halloween! Starting off our list, let's talk about an enemy ambush that nobody could have expected would happen, and we need to head to Dark Souls 3, to the bridge outside of Irithyll. When you reach this place after the Catacombs of Carthus, you have to cross a large bridge to reach the main city. Only the Irithyll bridge has a surprise. After you get a certain distance across, one of the Pontiff's gigantic hounds will appear from a cloud of mist behind you and begin assaulting the player. Most people won't notice until it's too late and you're already wrapped up in the jaws of your killer, and it made me absolutely lose it my first time playing. I didn't see it coming. I thought we'd have a nice stroll across the bridge and that's it. You can choose to fight this enemy or run to the next bonfire, assuming you have the doll from the Cathedral of the Deep. Otherwise, you won't even be able to progress. But if you choose not to fight this enemy, it then pulls the same trick and ambushes you later in the level in the lake below the bridge, so just kill it while it's on the bridge. 2 ambushes for the price of 1 if you pick the coward's way out. It's a classic jump scare style of horror that works surprisingly well with good build-up, and just barely squeaks onto our list. Moving on to our only trip to the land of Drangleic, I really don't think Dark Souls 2 is a particularly scary game, but there's one moment that the developers really nailed, and it's a great work of subversion. You see, Dark Souls 2 is the only Souls game to really shake things up when it comes to New Game Plus. You'll find new red phantoms to fight throughout familiar areas that keeps you on your toes. But nothing could prepare the player for a sudden intrusion at Brightstone Cove Seldora as you make your way to the Church of the Prowling Magus, only to be greeted by fucking Freya. The area boss just decides to come and say hi a whole half an area before the boss fight is intended to take place. You just feel a rumbling and then suddenly you're being assaulted by a lord, and I just think it's fabulous. My arachnophobia taken full advantage of, and my torch that scares the smaller spiders away completely useless in this context. Freya only sticks around for a short while before retreating to her boss arena, but just the fact she makes an appearance and only on New Game Plus is a brilliant joke on the part of the developers. Terrified me beyond belief and very deserving of a spot on this list. For Sekiro's entry in this video, I wanted to focus on another boss-based instance of fear, and it's the well-paced reveal that there's a Phase 2 to the Headless Ape fight. You've fought your way through the Sunken Valley, and this bestial monkey awaits in his watering hole. And after a long-fought battle, you're able to come out on top, severing the monkey's head from its body and dropping it to the ground in a shinobi execution. At this point in the game, we haven't seen a boss have a major transition between phases outside of Genichiro's Way of Tomoe form, and that happened in a cutscene. So when the Headless Ape just begins to writhe around before rising to its feet with jerked movements, it's enough to make anybody's blood run cold. Due to the centipede inside the creature, it's now moving like an insect, its body completely under control of its parasitic host, like a puppet on a string. It's horrifying, and really an eye-opening moment that explains why the eternal life of the Senpo monks is such a bad idea. Plus, anytime a boss fakes you out with a new phase is hilarious and terrifying at the same time. Sister Freed's Phase 3 fight has a similar effect, but with the Headless Ape, this is a clearly decapitated dead creature coming back to life to kill you. Nothing creepier than this in the game outside of those Headless I mentioned last week, and I stand by that fact. For Demon Souls entry in this video, I of course couldn't help but return to one of my favorite Soulsborne areas, the Tower of Latria. But while I could talk about the general ambiance of the prison, I instead want to focus on a small aspect of 3-2, Upper Latria. And that's the gigantic beating heart at the center of the structure. Your goal throughout the level is to dump this pulsating organ down the tower, allowing you to climb the steps to the man-eaters. And no matter where you are, that dull throbbing from each heartbeat rings across the towers and bridges, reminding you of the absolute otherworldly organ hung above. And yet the moment that stays with me, and makes me realize just how fucked up 3-2 is when you finally drop the heart down the tower, and you're greeted by countless horrific monsters crawling out of the flesh. It hits you then that this was no heart, but a nest, an artificial womb to breed monsters likely made from the people of Latria itself. The visual is grotesque, and it makes me shudder in disgust, which is perfect. That's exactly what I wanted from an area that so heavily leans into horror in its tropes. And there's a reason why outside of Bloodborne, no other game in the series has quite hit the feelings Latria gives me, and that's because FromSoft doesn't really lean into their sense of horror quite enough. If I can just take a brief moment of your time, my new channel goal is to reach 20,000 subscribers by summer of 2024. And you guys can help. Just look at how many of you aren't subscribed so far. Be sure to parry that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all my latest videos. Back to the video. And just missing out on the top 5, we have a universal experience that everyone can relate to. I'm choosing to focus on Dark Souls 1 here, as I needed a moment from this game on the list, but in reality this section is dedicated to everyone who ever played a Soulsborne game for the first time and found a nice chest hidden away, be it at the bottom of Sense Fortress, or in that one room in the high wall of Lothric, or within Earthen Peak in Dark Souls 2, only to discover that those chests had teeth, a tongue, and weren't chests but in fact mimics. You never forget your first mimic, as it puts the fear of God into you for every future treasure chest encounter. But Soulsborne goes that extra step by making the mimics extremely creepy. From Dark Souls 1's ballerina creatures with their hideous hyena-like laughter and high kicks, to the backbending contortions of the Dark Souls 2 mimics that crawl along the ground. And then both of them return in Dark Souls 3 just to make sure we get that extra element of nope, 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 nope. It's a simple jump scare within gaming, but I don't think anyone does mimic chests quite like Soulsborne. And I'm actually kind of sad they didn't return for Elden Ring, a real missed opportunity to traumatize some new players. But speaking of Elden Ring and traumatizing players with chests, I couldn't make this list without including the moment that went viral for players worldwide as they got their hands on the game, making their way to Lake Agil in Limgrave, wandering down some steps to get some loot, only to find themselves transported away to another location. Transport chests were a genius aspect of Elden Ring's early game, often bringing the player somewhere completely new, which also expanded the map beyond its initial limited scope, blowing the player's mind constantly. And yet nobody expected to find themselves in a dangerous mineshaft with enemies that could kill them extremely quickly and no way to warp back. And when you do manage to open the gate outwards, you find yourself greeted by a blood-red sky and some of the most well-designed, aesthetically unpleasing scenery imaginable. Caelid is designed to make people feel uncomfortable, and to make you feel unwelcome. And walking into the swamp of Aeonia, potentially getting scarlet rotted and wondering just how far away you are from the lush greens of Limgrave, there's a reason it was one of the most talked about sequences on the internet. Sadly, I never got to experience this blind, as reviewers had already spoiled this moment days before the official release, But I truly feel this is the scariest moment in Elden Ring, and nothing comes remotely close. It won't come as a shock to players that Bloodborne makes up a large portion of the rest of this list. It's FromSoft's attempt at subtle horror with the gothic and Lovecraftian influences, and I love it. And one extremely memorable moment comes in the game's Upper Cathedral Ward area. This location is straight out of a horror movie, from the bridge leading to the first lamp with the gnarled trees looking intimidating, the horrific bloody alien babies found outside of the orphanage, and then you get that classic werewolf through the window jump scare. But my favourite moment from Upper Cathedral Ward is the obvious one. As you enter the main room, the only light comes from this glimmer of the chandelier on the ceiling, and the way it swings has you thinking you'll be using the light source to navigate this enclosed space, only for a group of werewolves to launch themselves onto the chandelier, snapping the chain and bringing it down, coating the room in pitch black inky darkness. All you can see are the bright blue eyes of your foes hunting you, and whether you choose to press on and fight or return to the safety of the nearby hallway is completely up to you. But this simple moment turns Upper Cathedral Ward into a true horror game experience, and it's masterfully done. But before we go back to Bloodborne for our final two entries, let's first turn our attention to Dark Souls 3 again, as perhaps the most memorable scares in this game come from my least favourite area, the Irithyll dungeon. A jail where you sneak around, avoiding the deadly jailers, and of course this is where they had to place the biggest scares. Two moments stand out for me. Firstly, the corpses that when you collect their items, will let out a shrewd yell that burrows deep into your mind. Play this area at 2 AM in the morning and you'll be absolutely bricking it every time you pick up one of these items. It's a jump scare in its purest form, and it works brilliantly. But more than that, we have the Wretches. You make your way through a broken wall and immediately come face to face with this non-hostile wretch clinging against the far cell. Its baby-like face watching you while its body extends in fear? Curiosity? I didn't know what to do when I first saw this thing and got very scared, but it wasn't doing anything, so maybe they're non-hostile? So when you see another later in the dungeon, you think, ah, a friend. And then you let your guard down and they attack and stab you in the back. It's a masterful moment of making you feel safe but also creeped out, only to then have your fears and paranoia proven true just minutes later. Especially if you got hit by the one after chasing that one crystal lizard. Good times. My second favourite scariest moment in Soulsborne is a very brief, very simple setup that happens in the Hypogean jail. And obviously this whole area could be on this list alone with so many memorable instances, but I could only choose one, and I picked this moment because I love it and also because my boyfriend loves it too. As you make your way to the stairwell leading to the jail cells that take you out to Dark Beast Parl, you might notice a brief flash on the screen, a subtle movement at the bottom of the staircase, a witch who runs to the right of the screen. And you think, I saw you, you're not getting the best of me. You walk to the bottom of the stairs, turn to your right to hack at the witch you saw who is there, and then you're grabbed from behind by a second witch you couldn't have predicted, and then they gouge your eyes out and likely kill you with their damage. It's such a perfectly designed jump scare setup that plays on the player's expectations to deliver a great scare, and also teaches the player to always be wary upon entering a new room. It's a lesson learned, and also a great sequence to watch new players go through because they always fall for it. Unless you're me in this current playthrough where I actually entered through the outside side door, purposefully ruining the scare. Revenge is best served with a Kirkhammer after all. I also want to give a brief shout out to this moment in Old Yarnum when you're in the bottom streets and there is smoke coming up from this alley and you just hear a screech. Something is down there, but you have no idea what it is. So you brave your way through the smoke, absolutely terrified, and it's just a regular enemy. But I love that for a second, the game made you think. Bloodborne, you are so good at this. But my favorite scariest moment in Soulsborne is very simple. It's the gaining of insight from Bloodborne. Whether it's making the Blood Moon rise, or someone who wanted to farm insight early in the game, it is Lovecraftian horror at its finest, as with each new set of insight, more of the world is revealed to you. 1 insight, the doll comes to life. 15 insight, and you'll get new attacks from the church doctors of the cathedral ward, and you'll have mad spectres appearing in Hemwick Charnel Lane. And that's all cute and all, but it's when you hit 40 insight and the secrets of the world are thrown open, and you suddenly see all of the lesser amygdalas throughout Bloodborne's world. For me, the scariest moment in Soulsborne isn't a jump scare or an enemy, but the knowledge that those creatures have been there the entire time. You just couldn't see them. It is Lovecraftian horror, making you think about your place in the universe. Is there something just out of sight that we can't comprehend, watching over us at any given moment? Seeing streamers and YouTubers reacting to seeing the amygdalas for the first time is, it's golden. Never a dull moment seeing the shocked faces, especially upon realizing your safe haven, Erden Chapel, has a friend hanging just outside. Maybe there's a friend outside your window right now. Happy Halloween. Thank you everyone for watching today's video. If you enjoyed, be sure to parry that subscribe button so that friend outside of your window stays happy, am I right? I hope you're all having a good Halloween, I know I am. My social links are on screen now, feel free to follow where you feel comfortable. I recommend my Twitter or my Blue Sky if you have it. A massive shout out to my patrons over on Patreon, you guys are amazing. Thank you supporting me for another month. And I will see you guys next time for another video. Adios.